guys, what's going on? It's Ultimus. We are here one more time for you, this time looking at the Shadow Priest artifact weapon tree. The Shadow Priest dagger itself looks pretty cool, personally. Whoa, water bottle. Every time. Have you guys noticed every time I sit down to record something, some random noise shoots off in this apartment? Sometimes it's the phone, sometimes it's some creepy ghosty downstairs, and this time it was my water bottle. Say hello, water bottle, since you're so keen on joining this video. The Shadow Priest dagger itself actually looks pretty cool. It definitely looks like the type of weapon that someone who is committed and dedicated their lives to the dark arts and the occult itself would use, that's for sure. And since Shadow Priest are making the shift over to more of a focus on insanity as a mechanic and a resource, and the serving and the surrendering of oneself to the old gods, I think it fits quite nicely. So let's see how some of these talents or abilities play into that with this tree. I'll say it every time just about, and I'll say it again here on this one just for the sake of clarity. Do remember that all this stuff is still just an alpha, and this has just been released. Some of this information might not even be right. So we'll see once all this goes live, and as we go through alpha and beta testing, what stays, what doesn't. But it's just nice to have a first look and kind of get an impression of what direction they're trying to go more or less with it. So the starting point for the Shadow Priest artifact weapon is here in Void Torrent. It's a 4-second cast, and it is channeled. It has a 60-second cooldown, and it raises your dagger into the sky and absorb nearby void energy. Then release a torrent of void energy at your target, dealing 4 plus 800% of spell power. Interesting. Shadow damage over 4 seconds. While channeling the spell, your insanity no longer drains. Requires void form. Interesting. So, because right now I'm immediately thinking, if you have this every minute and you pop it, your insanity doesn't drain. Is there anything that makes it to where you gain insanity as you sit in combat or as you take damage? Because that could be interesting. This could be a nice way to cap yourself off on void power, if, you know, taking advantage of players that aren't paying attention, if that makes sense. I know there's the one talent that lets you basically turn into a big old shadowy void beast, and you like doing insane damage, and your insanity regen is insanely high. But as soon as you lose all of your insanity, you actually die, which I really hope that actually makes it into live. But I'll be curious how that plays with this. But it's kind of cool. I will, yet again, here on the artifact trees, it's kind of cool to see how the very first ability you're getting is going to play into the core idea of what they're doing and where they're going with each of these classes, which I think is a really smart move on their part. It helps keep you connected and helps start you off on the right foot of getting connected and really getting a feel for their vision, I think, for these characters and for these classes. So I think it's a good place to start, and I think they're going in a good direction with it. But that's just my 2 cents on that one. Sinister Thoughts. Each cast of Mind Blast increases the damage of your next Shadow Word spell by 5%, and it does stack up to 5 times, I think. So that would go up to 5, 10, 15, 20, 25%. Sorry, I am actually really bad with math and numbers. So each cast of Mind Blast increases the damage of your next Shadow Word spell by 5%. I'm assuming that's Shadow Word Pain, Shadow Word Death, and any other Shadow Words they are adding into our ability kit, which is interesting. Yeah, it looks like... So far, yeah. Tremble in Fear. When Psychic Horror is removed from the target, they are snared for 30% or by 30% for 2 seconds. And the effect doesn't increase, but the duration does. So the initial baseline is 2 seconds, goes up to 3, then stacks and caps off at 4. That's kind of a cool mechanic. So if someone dispels Psychic Horror, because obviously I don't think it doesn't count as removed if it finishes its duration. So I'm curious if your damage that you do to the target would remove it. Is that how that works mechanically? Or would it just be like a dispel? Because I don't think people really dispel fears all that hard. So it would have to be like a damage thing that removes it. That's interesting. Either way, kind of cool to have an extra CC attached to your fear there, or your psychic horror there. From Shadows, reduces the cooldown of dispersion by 20 seconds. 30 seconds, up to 40 seconds. That's kind of cool. That I feel like is necessary, because dispersion itself is already such a weak defensive for Shadow Priest. Reducing the cooldown on it is quite nice, I think. It's a step in the right direction. Mental Fortitude. Overhealing from Vampiric Touch will grant you an Absorb Shield. Oh, that's kind of cool. So it gives you just an emphasis to make sure you're keeping Vampiric Touch up on the target. And I think it'll reward your healer's gameplay for keeping you capped off 2 health-wise. I know that always isn't ideal, or it isn't always realistic in PvP. Capping someone off at full health, sometimes 75% is as good as it's going to get, and you have to make it work. But I think it's kind of cool that that talent, at least, or this ability here, will reward that type of gameplay. Like, if your healer can manage to get you topped off with health, or you can top yourself off, then it's just going to turn it into an Absorb Shield, which I think is kind of cool. I can get behind that. Especially since, like, overall they're reducing the amount of absorbs in the game as it is. And so 1 or 2 here and there I don't think is a bad thing personally. Thoughts of Insanity. Shadow Man now heals for 10% more, and you take 20% less damage from the backlash. That's kind of cool. And that stacks up to 20%, 40% there. So men will heal for 20% more, and you take 40% less damage. That's kind of cool. I can dig it. Avoid Corruption. Mindseer causes targets with your Shadow Word Pain or Vampiric Touch effects to immediately take a 30% of the tick of their damage. Oh, wow. That's kind of cool. So we got a lot of these abilities here that are appearing in here. I'm wondering how they're going to work, because they don't really say passive. They don't say activated. They don't have a cooldown on them. So it's just interesting to see how some of these are going to work, because Void Corruption I could see actually being a decent ability that you pop, just like an instant cooldown or whatever. I don't know what the cooldown would be on it. Minute maybe, something like that, minute and a half, but 45 seconds maybe even, but just instantly taking that 30% of the damage that they would take, but just instantly, which is kind of a cool thing. I dig it. I like the icon for it. Looks like DNA. I don't know, weird observation. Power of the Old Gods. Ooh, you summon a faceless void form. Oh, let me read that again. You summon a faceless void from the aid. Wow, I am. This is where we call it quits and we ask someone who can read English properly to take over the channel, because this is just embarrassing. You summon a faceless void from... Oh, actually not even my fault. That's Blizzard's fault for misspelling it. I'm off the hook. We're saved, boys. We're saved. Alright, so from somewhere, who knows, Connecticut maybe, somewhere in the deep south. For all we know, it could be Florida Man. To aid you in battle for 12 seconds, who casts devastating voice spells at your target. Replaces Shadow Fiend. Okay, that's kind of cool. Alright, whatever. So wherever this dude's coming from, he means business. We'll leave it at that. That's kind of the impression I'm getting. Also, my chair is very uncomfortable tonight. This is not ideal. Oh, seeing what I neglected to do is finish clicking on Void Corruption, and that stacks up to 50%. Holy crap. That's pretty strong. So that would cause your... So Mindseer causes targets with your shadow. Yeah. So anything with your Shadow Word Pain or Vampiric Touch effects will immediately take 50% of a tick of their damage. So that's kind of crazy. Which, I mean, isn't too much initially, because both those damage don't really do a whole lot on their own, like their individual ticks. But just instantly taking 50% of that damage, it's kind of a nice little effect, I think. Kind of cool. To the Pain. Shadow Word Pain and damage increased by 6%, 10%, I'm assuming 13, yeah, 13. Death's Embrace increases the damage of your Shadow Word Death by, I'm assuming, up to 13% fully decked out, cool. Sphere of Insanity. When you enter Void form, you summon a Void Sphere for 15 seconds. While this sphere is active, 0% of all direct damage dealt is additionally dealt to any target with your Shadow Word Pain on them. Oh. So whatever the percentage of damage is, while it's active, that percent of that damage is direct damage. Oh, wow. So I feel like Shadow Priests are going to be even stronger when it comes to AoE, just with this alone. Because, I mean, everything... Because the whole, I feel like, as a Shadow Priest, typically you're dotting people up pretty heavily anyways with Shadow Word Pain. You're doing a lot of dot weaving there as it is. Because if I'm not mistaken, Shadow Priest stack a lot of crit because they want their Void Entropies to proc a lot. At least that's the way it was in Mist of Pandaria. I'm not too familiar with it in WoD right now because I haven't really been playing anything else other than my Warrior when I actually get time to play. So correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But just being able to do a little extra damage there around to everything already hit with your Shadow Word Pain, I think is quite nice. I can get behind that. Kind of a cool ability. Touch of Darkness. Vampiric Touch damage is increased by, I'm assuming, up to 13%. Cool. Thrive in the Shadows. Dispersion now heals you for 100% of your maximum health over its duration. Oh, snap. So wait a second. So we're getting a massive reduction to cooldown on Dispersion, and now it's going to heal you for 100% of your maximum health throughout the course of its duration. That's almost like a full-on... I don't want to say it resets the fight, but to a degree it resets the fight. Because, I mean, resetting the fight would be like if you had all your cooldowns back up and stuff like that. But, I mean, starting back at... Wow, that's intense. I feel like... I mean, depending on what defensive Shadow Priests get and what comp they're playing, as far as like healers and what defensives they can throw out there to keep them alive, Shadow Priest might actually be able to take a hit this expansion coming up, which is very interesting because typically they've been very dependent upon the comp they play. They're very much like Shamans in that they need someone to peel for them hard or they're just going to crack under pressure. But with this, I mean, obviously this isn't like enough to say for sure, but just with the artifact weapon alone, that's interesting. You're going to heal for 100% of your maximum health over the duration of Dispersion. And this cooldown is already going to be reduced by 40% anyways, which that's kind of crazy. Interesting. It'll be interesting to see how this all stacks up. Mind Shattering, Mind Blast damage increased by, I'm assuming, up to 13%. Cool, pretty standard. Unleash the Shadows. Vampiric Touch critical strikes have a 20% chance to proc shadowy apparitions. I would guess that shadowy apparitions are similar to your void entropies. I think that's what they're called. The little like spirits that fly after anybody that's hit with a critical of your Shadow Word Pain, right? I'm not mistaken. Any Shadow Priest out there can confirm. Simply because I don't really feel like swapping over web pages right now in the middle because I just feel like that just looks cheesy and tacky. I hate when I have to do it. So if I don't have to do it, I'm not going to. Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of cool. And I'm assuming that stacks up to 40%. So kind of cool there. And last but not least, Mass Hysteria. Each stack of Void Form increases the damage of your Shadow Word Pain and Vampiric Touch by 0%. Okay, so whatever that percentage is going to be. Either way, each stack of Void Form, so however much Void Form you have built up, that Shadow Word Pain and Vampiric Touch damage is going to go up. So initially, that's kind of crazy. Just more damage all across the board. I'll be curious to see how Shadow Priest work. And, you know, I said I wasn't going to do this earlier, but I'm going to do it right now because it's worth talking about. So hold on a second here. One quick copy and pasta. So I say that I'm curious about how this is going to work because I'm looking at their abilities now. And we never did any of the Shadow Priest or review for abilities or stuff like that yet because I really wasn't sure if there was much of a demand or interest in it necessarily because I feel like I'm really the only one here interested in Shadow Priest. But looking at Dispersion, it's a 2-minute cooldown, so reduced by 40 seconds. That's down to, what, 1 minute and 20 seconds. So still kind of crazy. Disperse reduces damage taken by 60%. Lasts 6 seconds. You can be cast while you're stunned, feared, or silenced. And then with that artifact talent, it's going to heal you for 100% of your health over the duration. So that's 6 seconds. That's crazy. That's a huge heal. Shadow Mend is our heal. It's the only heal they have. I'm imagining Mind Blast works the same. There's just no proper tooltip on it. And then here's a new ability here called Void Bolt. Sends a bolt of pure void energy at the enemy, causing 1 plus 400% of spell power, shadow damage, and extending the duration of Shadow Word Pain and Vampiric Touch by 3 seconds. Only be usable in Void Form. So again, you're seeing this stuff that's going to extend the duration of that Shadow Word Pain and Vampiric Touch. I like that they're adding that stuff in there as well because it's just... Because a lot of times I feel like, just even in leveling my Shadow Priest up a little bit, Shadow Word Pain falls off so quickly compared to other dots, I feel like. I don't know. I mean, I know there's got to be the emphasis in managing it, so it can't be too long of a duration, but I feel like it falls off so fast. And so having those abilities out there that are going to extend the duration, I think, is going to be nice. So it's going to give you a bigger window to pull off some of your bigger hits that you're looking for. A couple notable talents that I wanted to talk about in relation to some of our artifact weapon stuff is now Shadow Word Void. Blast the target's mind with shadow damage. It's interesting because of... where did it go? With just Sinister Thoughts being a mechanic already. So now we have Shadow Word Pain, Shadow Word Death, and then next, then we're gonna have the and then we're gonna have Shadow Word Void, which doesn't look like a dot, so I suppose that really wouldn't be all too crazy. But just like looking at some of the stuff here, like being able to buff the damage of your shadow apparitions by 100%, increasing just the vampirism of your vampiric touch, being able to reset. So again, you're looking at a lot of different. Looking like Shadow Priests are actually going to have some decent variety in their playstyles, at least. Which I like. I do, because I feel like Shadow Priests have been very straightforward, and they're decent and they're fun, but they definitely have been left behind, I think, over the years. And so it's cool to see them getting so much attention and getting reworked in this way. Whether or not it works, I think just the fact that it'll be different and very unique will be welcomed, personally. And then last but not least, I want to talk about one of their talents here in their level 100 section here, which I just think is crazy. Surrender to Madness. It's a 10-minute cooldown, which is crazy to me because, again, we haven't seen a 10-minute cooldown spell in a while. It's an instant. You surrender to the old god, sacrificing your soul for ultimate power. All your insanity-generating abilities generate 300% more insanity until you exit Void Form, and then you die. It requires Void Form. So you pop this, and your generation of insanity goes through the roof, but you got to keep that up. You're gonna have to be able to maintain that, or else you're going to die just instantly. And I just think that mechanic is just hilarious to me. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. That alone intrigues me enough to want to play a Shadow Priest, as silly as that is. But all that to say, I think Shadow Priest are going in an interesting direction. Sorry for all the cut and pasting in this video. I was having some trouble kind of keeping my thoughts in one order and then hopping around from different web page to web page. It was a little tricky just because I don't really do it all that often, and some stuff, we had some technical errors as well. But all that to say, I am definitely still intrigued to try my Shadow Priest outcome Legion, especially just with the possibility of different playstyles. It looks like they might not be as squishy, and it just sounds like they're going to do a ton of damage. And just the overall theme and feel that they're giving to them and that they're molding them into, I just think really appeals to me more than any other caster class at the moment. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope this wasn't too scatterbrained or crazy for you guys. I ended up recording this one really, really late, but I definitely wanted to get it done because I wasn't really sure when I'd have time to do it next, and I didn't want to let you guys down. So, all that to say, I hope you enjoyed. Please do hit it with a like and a comment if you did. Please don't hesitate to share it if you know of anybody who would be interested in watching the video as well. I'd appreciate it, and it means a lot to me. And all the socials will be linked where you can find me, talk to me, communicate with me, get in touch with me, all that good stuff down below in the description. But that's going to do it for this video. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.